Hey Reddit. First time posting here, but I feel like I need to get this off my chest. I never thought I'd be the guy sharing a story like this, but life has a funny way of proving you wrong. So here's the deal. My name's Mike, and I've been married to my wife, Jessica, for 8 years. We met in college. She was the life of every party, full of energy, always the center of attention. I was quieter, more reserved, the guy who'd rather watch a movie than go to a bar. Somehow it worked. She made me feel alive, and I thought I grounded her. For most of our marriage, things were great. Or at least, I thought they were. We had the typical ups and downs, but nothing that made me think we were heading for disaster. That is, until about 6 months ago. It started with small things, Jessica staying late at work more often, being glued to her phone, laughing at text messages she didn't want to share. When I asked about it, she'd roll her eyes and say I was being paranoid. "It's just work stuff, Mike," she'd say, annoyed. "Why are you so insecure?" At first, I believed her. I mean, we all get busy, right? But something didn't sit right with me. It wasn't just the extra hours or the secretive phone habits. It was the way she started treating me, like I was a nuisance. She used to be affectionate, always touching my arm or leaning on me while we watched TV. Now, she barely wanted to sit next to me. It felt like I was losing her, but every time I brought it up, she'd brush me off or twist the conversation into me being too clingy. The real red flag came about a month ago. Jessica and I were supposed to have dinner together, but at the last minute, she said she had a work meeting. She looked amazing when she left, too amazing for a work meeting, in my opinion. Tight black dress, perfect makeup. I even joked, "Are you trying to impress the CEO or something?" She laughed it off. "Don't be ridiculous, Mike. It's just a dinner meeting." But here's the thing, she forgot her work laptop. She never forgets her laptop when she's actually going to work. That's when my gut started screaming at me. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I decided to let it go for the moment. But later that night, when she got home, I noticed she smelled different. Like cologne, but not mine. "Smells like you had a good time," I said, trying to keep it light. She shot me a glare. "What's that supposed to mean? I told you I was at a work dinner." "Right," I said, forcing a smile. But inside I knew something was off. The next day, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went through her phone while she was in the shower. And there it was, a text thread with a guy named Ryan. "Ryan, can't wait to see you again. Last night was amazing." Smiling face with smiling eyes. "Jessica, you're bad. LOL. Don't make me blush in front of Mike." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I put the phone back where I found it and sat on the edge of the bed, my head spinning. After seeing those texts, I couldn't think straight. Every smile, every "I love you" from Jessica over the past few months suddenly felt fake. My brain was racing, trying to make sense of it. Who the hell was Ryan? Was this emotional, or was it physical? Was I just imagining things? I knew I couldn't confront her, not yet. If I came at her with nothing but a hunch and a couple of flirty texts, she'd twist it around like she always did. She was good at making me doubt myself, at making me feel like the bad guy. So, I decided to play it cool and gather more evidence. The next day, I, accidentally, spilled some coffee on her phone case while we were having breakfast. "Oh shit. Sorry about that," I said, grabbing a napkin. Jessica rolled her eyes and handed me her phone so I could wipe it off. "Be careful," she said, her tone annoyed. I took my time cleaning it, just long enough to notice the lock screen. Another text from Ryan. "Ryan, can't stop thinking about you." Her phone buzzed again in my hand. "Ryan, when can I see you?" Jessica snatched the phone back, laughing awkwardly. "Work stuff," she said quickly. "Nothing interesting." I didn't say anything, but my stomach was churning. Work stuff? Really? That night, I stayed up after Jessica went to bed. I couldn't shake the image of those texts. She had to be lying. I decided to check her laptop. It was risky, but she'd gone to bed early, and I knew her password. Sure enough, there was more. Emails from Ryan. Photos. Plans to meet up at a hotel last month. But the one that gutted me the most? Ryan. Last night was so much better than anything with Mike. You're incredible. Jessica. Haha, stop. He'd die if he knew how much fun I'm having with you. I closed the laptop and sat there in the dark, shaking with rage. My wife was not only cheating on me, she was laughing about it. Mocking me. The next morning, I couldn't hold it in any longer. While Jessica was making coffee, I leaned against the counter, my arms crossed. Who's Ryan? I asked, my voice calm. Her hand froze mid-pour, but only for a second. She recovered quickly, laughing nervously. Ryan? What are you talking about? Don't play dumb, I said, my tone sharper now. I saw the texts. I know you've been meeting him. Her face went pale, but she still tried to brush it off. You're being ridiculous, Mike. He's just a friend from work. We've been working on a project together. That's it. A friend? I snapped. Is that what you call sneaking off to hotels and laughing about how I'd die if I knew? Her jaw dropped, and for the first time, she didn't have a quick comeback. Mike, you're overreacting, she said finally. It's not what you think. Then what is it? I demanded. Because it sure as hell looks like you've been sleeping with him. Jessica's expression hardened, her defensiveness kicking in. Fine, she said, crossing her arms. Yes, we've been seeing each other. But it's not a big deal. It doesn't mean anything. I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. It doesn't mean anything? Are you kidding me? She rolled her eyes. Oh, stop being so dramatic. I'm still here, aren't I? It's not like I left you for him. Her words hit me like a slap. I stared at her, barely able to process what I was hearing. You're unbelievable, I said, my voice shaking. Do you even hear yourself? Mike, it's not like you've been perfect either, she shot back, her tone icy. You're so boring these days. You don't even try anymore. That was it. Something inside me snapped. Get out, I said, my voice low and cold. Jessica blinked, caught off guard. What? I said get out, I repeated. Go stay with your friend Ryan, since he's so much better than me. She opened her mouth to argue, but I didn't give her the chance. I walked out of the kitchen, slamming the door behind me. For the first time since this all started, I felt like I was taking back control. After Jessica stormed out that morning, the house felt eerily quiet. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the cup of coffee she left behind, and it hit me, my marriage was over. 8 years together, gone just like that. I should have felt relief for finally confronting her, but all I felt was anger. Anger at her for lying, anger at myself for not seeing it sooner, and anger at how quickly everything fell apart. For the rest of the day, I kept replaying her words in my head. It doesn't mean anything. How could she be so casual about something so devastating? Was I really that boring to her? Did she ever even love me? I spent the day going through the motions, trying to keep myself busy. I cleaned the house, made a half-hearted attempt at cooking dinner, and then sat on the couch, staring at the empty spot where Jessica used to curl up beside me. That night, I finally broke down. All the anger, frustration, and sadness I'd been holding in came rushing out. I punched a pillow, paced the living room, and shouted into the void like an idiot. I felt ridiculous, but it helped. By the time I went to bed, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me anymore. The next morning, I called a lawyer. It felt strange to even say the words out loud. I need to file for divorce. But the moment I said them, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. My lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Linda, was straightforward and reassuring. Do you have any proof of infidelity? She asked. Yes, I said. Texts, emails, and even photos from her laptop. Good, Linda said. That'll help. Infidelity can play a big role in divorce proceedings, especially when it comes to property and assets. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had a plan. Jessica might have shattered our marriage, but she wasn't going to walk away unscathed. That evening, Jessica came back to the house. I was in the living room when she walked in, her face a mix of anger and defiance. So, this is how it's going to be? She said, dropping her purse on the table. What do you want, Jessica? I asked, keeping my tone calm. I want to talk, she said, crossing her arms. You can't just throw me out like that. This is my house too. Not for long, I said. I already called a lawyer. Her eyes widened, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of panic. You're serious? Dead serious, I said, standing up. You made your choices, Jessica. You don't get to play the victim now. She scoffed, her defensive walls going back up. Oh, please. Don't act like you're some perfect husband, Mike. You've been emotionally distant for years. Don't you dare try to turn this around on me. I snapped. You cheated. You lied. This is on you. Jessica opened her mouth to argue but then stopped. For a moment she looked like she wanted to say something genuine, an apology, maybe, but instead she grabbed her purse and stormed out. I sat back down, my heart pounding. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was finally taking control of my life. After Jessica stormed out, I figured she'd go to Ryan's place. It made sense. He was the one she'd been sneaking around with, and I didn't think she had anyone else to turn to. I was wrong. The next morning, I got a call from her mother, Diane. She was fuming. Mike, what is going on? She demanded. Jessica called me last night in tears, saying you kicked her out of the house. I pinched the bridge of my nose, already exhausted. Diane, your daughter cheated on me. Repeatedly. She's been seeing someone else behind my back. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then Diane sighed. She didn't tell me that part. Of course she didn't, I said bitterly. She wants to play the victim. Mike, I'm so sorry, Diane said, her voice softer now. I don't condone what she did, but can we talk about this before things get ugly? Maybe there's a way to work this out. There's nothing to work out, I said firmly. I've already filed for divorce. Diane didn't argue. She just sighed again and said, If you ever want to talk, you know where to find me. Later that day, Jessica sent me a flurry of texts, alternating between anger and desperation. Jessica, you're overreacting. Jessica, we can fix this if you just calm down. Jessica, how could you do this to me? Jessica, you're not perfect either, Mike. I ignored every single one. That evening, my lawyer called with an update. Jessica's hired an attorney, Linda said. She's contesting the divorce terms. I clenched my jaw. On what grounds? She's claiming she's entitled to half the house and spousal support, Linda said. But with the evidence you've provided, I'm confident we can fight this. Good, I said. Let her try. A few days later, I got an unexpected message on social media. It was from a woman named Megan. Megan, hi, Mike. You don't know me, but I think we need to talk. I'm Ryan's wife. My stomach dropped. I hadn't even considered the possibility that Ryan was married. We met up at a coffee shop the next day, and Megan wasted no time getting to the point. I found out about Ryan and Jessica last week, she said, her voice trembling with barely contained anger. I saw the texts. He didn't even bother hiding them. I'm sorry, I said, feeling an odd sense of guilt even though I hadn't done anything wrong. Don't be, she said sharply. I'm filing for divorce too. I just thought you should know. For the next hour, we swapped stories. Megan told me how Ryan had been sneaking around for months, using late meetings as an excuse just like Jessica had. She showed me texts that mirrored the ones I'd found on Jessica's phone, sweet nothings mixed with complaints about their spouses. What are you going to do now? I asked. Make sure he doesn't walk away unscathed, Megan said firmly. And if you need anything, evidence, testimonies, whatever, I'm more than happy to help. By the time we parted ways, I felt a strange sense of camaraderie. Megan and I were strangers, but we were fighting the same battle. That night, Jessica called me. I was tempted to let it go to voicemail, but something told me to answer. What do you want, Jessica? I said, my voice cold. I know you've been talking to Megan, she said, her tone accusatory. So what if I have? She's trying to destroy Ryan. Jessica snapped. And now she's dragging me down with him. You destroyed yourself, I said flatly. Megan's just cleaning up the mess you made. Jessica started to say something else, but I hung up before she could finish. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I had the upper hand. After the call with Jessica, I sat in my living room, staring at my phone. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I wasn't drowning in this mess. Between Megan's support and the leverage my lawyer had, I finally had the tools to fight back. The next day, Megan sent me a folder of evidence she'd gathered from Ryan's phone, texts, emails, even receipts for hotel rooms. It was damning, and it painted a clear picture of how deep this betrayal ran. I forwarded everything to Linda, who was thrilled. "This is exactly what we need," she said. "With this and the evidence you already have, Jessica won't stand a chance in court." Despite the progress, I still felt uneasy. Jessica hadn't backed down, and I knew she wasn't the type to go quietly. Sure enough, she showed up at the house that evening, pounding on the door. "Mike, open up!" she shouted. I hesitated, considering ignoring her, but I didn't want her causing a scene in the neighborhood. I opened the door, keeping it partially closed behind me. "What do you want?" I asked. Her face was a mix of anger and desperation. "We need to talk." "There's nothing to talk about," I said. "It's over, Jessica." Her eyes narrowed. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Teaming up with Megan, trying to turn everyone against me. You did that yourself," I said coldly. Jessica's expression shifted, and for a moment I saw the person she used to be, the woman I fell in love with. "Mike, I'm sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I messed up. I know I did. But we can fix this. Please." I almost felt bad for her, but then I remembered the texts. The lies. The nights she spent with Ryan while I sat at home, wondering why she didn't love me anymore. "No, Jessica," I said firmly. "We can't fix this. You made your choice, and now you have to live with it." She stared at me, her face crumbling, before turning and walking back to her car. I watched her drive away, a strange mix of relief and sadness settling over me. Over the next week, things escalated. Jessica's lawyer pushed back hard, claiming she was entitled to a large portion of the house and spousal support. Linda assured me that our case was strong, but it didn't make the process any less stressful. Megan, on the other hand, was relentless. She confronted Ryan at work, exposing his affair to his coworkers. The fallout was immediate. Ryan was put on leave while HR conducted an investigation, and rumors spread like wildfire. Jessica wasn't spared either. Megan posted screenshots of the texts and emails online, tagging Jessica's workplace in the process. Within days, Jessica was called into a meeting with HR. She wasn't fired outright, but the damage to her reputation was done. I knew Megan's approach was ruthless, but I couldn't bring myself to stop her. Jessica and Ryan had no problem destroying our lives, so why shouldn't they face the consequences? The final blow came during the divorce hearing. Linda presented our case with the precision of a surgeon, laying out the evidence of Jessica's infidelity in excruciating detail. Jessica's lawyer tried to argue for leniency, claiming the affair was a temporary lapse in judgment. But the judge wasn't buying it. By the end of the hearing, the ruling was clear: I got the house, and Jessica walked away with nothing but her personal belongings. There would be no spousal support, no alimony, nothing. As I walked out of the courthouse, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in months, I could breathe again. That night, Megan and I met up for drinks to celebrate. "To fresh starts," she said, raising her glass. "To fresh starts," I echoed. We sat there for hours, talking and laughing like old friends. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I could finally move on. After the court hearing, I thought I'd feel triumphant, but the truth was, I just felt drained. Winning the divorce didn't erase the pain Jessica caused or undo the damage to my self-esteem. I spent the first few days in a haze, alternating between relief and a hollow sense of loss. The house was mine, but it felt empty now. I boxed up the last of Jessica's things and dropped them off at Diane's place. Diane was kind, apologizing again for her daughter's behavior, but I couldn't bear to linger. Being around her was a reminder of everything I wanted to forget. Instead, I threw myself into rebuilding my life. I started going to the gym with a buddy from work, something I hadn't done in years. It felt good, sweating out the anger and frustration, pushing my body instead of letting my thoughts drag me down. I also began reconnecting with old friends. Jessica had a way of pulling all the attention in our relationship, and over the years, I'd let my social circle shrink to almost nothing. Now, I was slowly reaching out again, rediscovering the parts of myself I'd lost in her shadow. One evening, I was sitting on the back porch with a beer in hand when Megan texted me. "Megan, how are you holding up?" Me, better than I thought I'd be. You? Megan, same. It's weird, isn't it? Like we won, but it doesn't really feel like winning. She wasn't wrong. Getting justice felt good, but it didn't erase the betrayal. Still, it was nice having someone who understood. We started talking more, checking in on each other every few days. One night, she sent me a meme about karma that made me laugh out loud. "Megan, I bet Jessica and Ryan are miserable right now." Me, let's hope so. For the first time, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't care if they were miserable. All I cared about was moving forward. One afternoon, I stopped by the grocery store to pick up a few things. As I was walking through the produce section, I saw her, Jessica. She looked different. Tired. Worn down. She was dressed casually, no makeup, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. For a moment I froze, unsure of what to do. Part of me wanted to turn around and leave, but another part wanted to see how she'd react. "Mike," she said when she spotted me. Her voice was hesitant, almost sad. "Jessica," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. For a moment, we just stood there, an awkward silence stretching between us. Then she sighed. "I'm glad I ran into you," she said. "I wanted to say, I'm sorry. For everything." I crossed my arms, not sure if I believed her. "You've said that before?" "I mean it this time," she said, her voice breaking. "I know I can't fix what I did, but I've lost everything, Mike. And I know it's my fault." I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. Instead, I just felt done. "I appreciate the apology," I said finally. "But it doesn't change anything." She nodded, tears filling her eyes. "I know. I hope you're happy." For the first time, I realized I was. "Take care, Jessica," I said, and walked away. That evening, I told Megan about the encounter. She apologized, I said. "It felt weird." "Do you think she meant it?" Megan asked. "Maybe," I admitted. "But it doesn't matter. It's too late." Megan nodded. "Good. You deserve better." And for the first time, I believed her. Life slowly started to feel normal again. Or maybe it was a new kind of normal. The days of second-guessing Jessica's every move and feeling like a stranger in my own marriage were gone. Instead, I woke up each day with a sense of clarity. I wasn't tied down by lies or toxic energy anymore. Megan and I stayed in touch, but our conversations shifted. They weren't about Jessica and Ryan anymore. They were about us, our goals, the things we wanted out of life, and how we were moving forward. It felt good to talk to someone who truly understood. One evening, I invited her over for dinner. Nothing fancy, just burgers on the grill and a couple of beers. She showed up with a smile, looking relaxed in jeans and a hoodie. "Thanks for inviting me," she said, setting a bottle of wine on the counter. "Thanks for coming," I replied. "It's nice to have company that doesn't come with drama." She laughed, and we spent the night talking and laughing like old friends. For the first time in a long time, I felt light, like the weight of the past was finally starting to lift. A few weeks later, Megan called me out of the blue. "Guess who texted me?" she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Ryan?" "Bingo," she said. "He's trying to worm his way back in. He actually had the audacity to say he misses me." "What did you say?" "I didn't even respond," Megan said. "Why bother? He's not worth my time." "Good," I said. "You deserve better than that." "Funny," she replied. I was just about to say the same thing to you. Her words stuck with me. For so long, I'd let Jessica's betrayal define how I saw myself. But Megan was right. I did deserve better. One afternoon, as I was cleaning out the garage, I found a box of old photos from my marriage. At first, I thought about throwing them out, but something stopped me. Instead, I sat down on the floor and started flipping through them. There we were, Jessica and me on our honeymoon, smiling at the camera. Photos of our first Christmas together, trips to the beach, and lazy Sundays spent in the backyard. For a moment, I felt a pang of sadness. Not for her, but for the life we built and the good memories we'd shared before everything fell apart. I thought about all the anger I'd carried since discovering her affair. The sleepless nights, the endless questions, the bitterness that ate away at me. And I realized something: holding on to that anger wasn't hurting her, it was hurting me. So, I packed up the photos and drove to a donation center. The memories would always be a part of my story, but I didn't need to hold on to the physical reminders anymore. That night, Megan called. "How are you?" she asked. "Good," I said, and for the first time, I meant it. "I think I'm finally ready to move on." "I'm glad," she said softly. "You deserve to be happy." "Same to you," I replied. We talked for hours that night, and by the time we hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: hope. A month after I cleared out the last remnants of my marriage, I got a text from Megan. "Megan, feel like going on an adventure?" I smiled at my phone, intrigued. "Me, what kind of adventure are we talking about?" "Megan, there's a hiking trail I've been wanting to try. Thought you might be up for it." It wasn't like me to say yes to something so spontaneous, but something about the idea felt right. The old me, the version of Mike who lived in Jessica's shadow, would have made excuses, but the new me was ready for something different. "Let's do it," I texted back. The hike was perfect. The air was crisp, the trail challenging but not overwhelming, and the view from the summit was breathtaking. We sat on a rock overlooking the valley, the sun setting in a blaze of orange and pink, and for the first time, I felt completely at peace. "You've come a long way, you know," Megan said, breaking the silence. "So have you," I replied. She smiled, and for a moment neither of us said anything. Then she reached over and took my hand. It wasn't romantic, not yet, but it was something. A connection. A promise that the pain we both endured didn't have to define us. As we hiked back down, I realized something. Life wasn't about clinging to what you'd lost. It was about finding the strength to move forward, to embrace the unknown, and to trust that better days were ahead. Over the next few months, Megan and I grew closer. It wasn't a whirlwind romance or some grand, dramatic love story. It was simple, natural, and real. We took things slow, letting the relationship build at its own pace. One night, as we sat on my back porch sharing a bottle of wine, she looked at me and said, "You know, if someone had told me a year ago that I'd be here, divorced, rebuilding my life, and sitting next to you, I wouldn't have believed them." "Same," I admitted. "But I wouldn't change it." "Me neither," she said, her voice soft. We sat in comfortable silence, the past finally feeling like it was where it belonged, behind us. Looking back, I can't say I'm grateful for what Jessica did. Her betrayal shattered me in ways I didn't think I could recover from. But in some strange way, it also set me free. It forced me to reevaluate my life, my priorities, and my worth. If I could offer advice to anyone going through something similar, it's this: don't let someone else's actions define you. It's okay to grieve, to be angry, to feel lost. But don't stay there. Surround yourself with people who support you, take back control of your story, and trust that the pain won't last forever. As for me, I'm still figuring things out. Megan and I are taking it one day at a time, and for the first time in a long time, I'm genuinely excited about the future. To anyone reading this, you're stronger than you think. Keep going.